Who is Peter Molyneux?
Peter Douglas Molyneux, born on May 5, 1959, is an English video game designer and programmer. He created the god games Populous, Dungeon Keeper, and Black and White, as well as Theme Park, the Fable series, Curiosity, What's Inside the Cube, and Goddess. He currently works at 22 Cans.
According to a Kotaku article by Jason Schreier in 2014,
Peter Molyneux is
crying. I don't know how to react to this. Legendary game designers don't often get emotional with the press.
This interview had only been the latest in a long line of rendezvous with the press. Peter Molyneux was kind of a media darling, and I say was because he's kind of fallen out of the limelight in recent years. There are a lot of reasons why, but one particular Peter Molyneux quote from this interview is, I think, highly illustrative.
If I ask people to be interested in my newest game, Goddess, if there's one reason for them to be interested,
he says, breaking into tears,
it's that I could not do anything that would not make my son proud.
Goddess. I sure hope that's good, you might say, if you don't already know what it is, because Goddess, now considered one of the top 10 biggest Kickstarter disappointments, was a shallow imitation of the kinds of games that were once Molyneux's bread and butter. And a lot of bread and butter he had because, yeah, believe it or not, at one point in time, Molyneux was considered Mr. Big Man on campus. The thing with Molyneux that's been talked about ad nauseum is that he overpromises shit to the extreme. One of his earliest big lies was that in the original Fable, you could knock down an acorn and it would grow into a big tree over the course of the game because it takes place over your character's lifetime. Does that sound cool and exciting? It sure does. And sounding cool is all it'll ever be because it's not in the fucking game, that's for sure. His overpromising really didn't end there. He said you could give birth and play as your children after you died, and you couldn't have kids at all. Peter Molyneux even claimed that you could play as a woman. What? Peter Molyneux's lies only ballooned with every project he made, but nothing compares to Project Milo. You remember the Kinect? It was a fun little thing that was billed as a full-on revolution to gaming that everyone just stopped giving a shit about pretty much somewhere around the release of
SpongeBob Surf and Skate Road Trip.
You could have done what I did, bug your parents for it, get it on launch, play it for a week, go absolutely apeshit with Kinectables or whatever, and then realize it sucks and go back to playing fucking Team Fortress 2. It's hard to believe now, but before it came out, the Kinect actually had ungodly amounts of hype. And nothing says ungod more than creating a childlike homunculus and trapping it on the computer. In 2009, the Xbox was diagnosed with the Kinect at E3. For whatever reason, the idea of full motion waggle wasn't interesting enough on its own, so Microsoft really needed a guy who can sell it, and who knows how to sell stuff more than good old Peter Molyneux.
Science fiction writers, filmmakers, they haven't imagined what we're able to do today. We've been experimenting with something here. I'd like you to meet a boy called Milo.
For millions of viewers, the Kinect stopped being the Wii but for your whole body and started being so frickin' poggers that it's scary. I need to stop talking like that. I'm 24. Because they aren't just making Wii bowling with your whole body. They're making Britbong Skynet. He's basically fucking sentient. He builds a full-on emotional connection with the actress.
Hiya Milo, how you doing?
Hi Claire, you okay?
Actually, I'm a bit nervous.
You? Nervous? I don't believe it.
This is the first time that thousands of people are going to see this.
Thousands of people?
Here we're seeing Claire being recognised, and the emotion in Claire's voice being recognised, and that emotion reflecting in Milo's face.
This is not presented as some kind of conceptual thing with no basis in reality. This is presented as somebody interfacing with the actual Kinect product.
Put these goggles on.
This wasn't acted. She felt the need to reach down for those goggles. They feel so connected to Milo's world. This wasn't acted.
Swish the water about a bit.
This wasn't acted.
See if you can touch a fish.
This wasn't acted.
They kind of just lied about it. They never said Milo was a game. They said he was a character, and that's different.
Science fiction writers, filmmakers, they haven't imagined. This wasn't acted.
Many people assumed that the implication was that this would eventually come out. But I'll just take a second to note, what the fuck?
And a smiley face. There we go. What do you think?
Look at what just happened.
Orange.
Claire drew a picture on a piece of paper. This is true technology that science fiction has not even written about.
What kind of person does this? Well, in regards to Peter Molyneux, I think the Milo presentation, more than anything else, demonstrates something about him, the dimensions of his soul. This is a man who, throughout his career, built a reputation as being the lying guy. Is he thinking this through? Is this part of some kind of weird Patrick Bateman internal calculation to maximize hype and get as many sales as possible? Or is this guy just actually that excited about developing games? So excited that his ambition frequently outpaces the budget and other constrictions that any project he's making might have to suffer through. Honestly, I feel like that's more the case. I think Peter Molyneux overall, his arc, that just tracks more. Peter Molyneux's excitement, which shines through in absolutely any interview he's ever had, kind of lent itself to a lot of people trusting him. Like, how could someone be this excited about something if it's not true? But of course, eventually people's patience runs out and they just start getting pissed off. And it's this weird and kind of almost sad bitterness that came from a genuine enjoyment of his work in spite of all of the lying and bullshit. It almost feels like all of the lies kind of melt away the second you boot up, like Black and White or Black and White 2 or Populous or any of the Fable games. You can't deny the man made some good games, and the relatively high quality of his games almost made up for the relatively low PolitiFact true score on any of his interviews. But it just kept getting worse. Now if you look up Peter Molyneux, you'll find several articles detailing his recent downfall into making things that are bad. And it's weird to think about how a lot of the attitude that made him so popular in the first place pretty much also directly led to his downfall in the public perception. In a pretty significant way, you can see little through lines of his behavior that led to where we are today, you know? Oh, you can knock down an acorn and it'll grow into a massive tree over the course of your character's life. Oh, this game is gonna be the most revolutionary of all time. You're gonna have a kid in your fucking living room. Oh, curiosity won't be a waste of fucking time for absolutely everybody. More on that later. But there was a point in time when people really believed in his shit. He would say something and everyone would go, oh, with that charming Bosmer accent, how could you not? But then the games come out and people realize, shit, I mean, Fable's a pretty decent RPG with some interesting mechanics, but it's not the greatest game ever made. And then everything kind of came to a head after he left his home game company, Lionhead Studios, which he had been with for several decades and he really made his name under. Molyneux, after having split off from Lionhead Studios, decided to make a new company, 22 Cans. The name is self-fulfilling prophecy, because that's how much the company is worth in 2022. He then fell prey to the siren call of Kickstarter. Crowdfunding was a particularly insidious poison for Molyneux, because it kind of enabled his penchant for overpromising to kick into maximum turbo overdrive. Everything, the excitability of consumers exploring the uncharted waters of crowdfunded games. Poor financial management under Peter Molyneux that couldn't be buffeted by the Scrooge McDuck fortune of Bill Gates. No one in Peter Molyneux's ear telling him to shut the fuck up and stop saying that things are going to be in the game when they're not going to be, and no one even knew he was going to say that. And also, holy shit, you literally sometimes make things up to test that they're paying attention during the interview. Bro. All those elements combine into one swirling mass over the Pacific. The perfect storm. Oh, and where's it headed? Consumer Alley. Oh man, I heard the buy more products from Peter Molyneux building was destroyed. Basically, Peter Molyneux's big first foray into crowdfunding was considered to be quite hype-inducing at first, kind sir, as they say on Reddit, but is now known as an absolutely legendary failure. While Peter Molyneux was CEO of 22 Cans, which he is no longer, he made several statements which came back to haunt him. The spookiest of which was, we are going to make a game called Goddess. Unfortunately, Molyneux started getting high off his own supply. He really started believing these things were possible, and I guess no one was there to tell him no! And what that translated to was an inability for Peter Molyneux to take an L. If a feature wasn't coming out, it's still gonna come out. It's just, you know, later. We're figuring it out. This is gonna be a perfect game, guys, I promise. It's almost better to just rip off the band-aid and say something's not gonna happen than drag it out for literal fucking years. And that was quite a painful process for people who wanted a new God game, a genre which had only dried up since Peter Molyneux's heyday. Goddess separated itself from its predecessors in the God game genre by calling itself the ultimate God game. Molyneux had an ambitious vision for the game, which included a living world.
In your crafted utopia, you can grow as a god in the face of various challenges that affect the population. You can watch hundreds of individual followers live out their lives with dynamic and captivating behavior.
Wow, that's crazy, it didn't happen. Goddess tried to be a mix of black and white in SimCity. It ended up being a mix of black and white and not finished. Oh, but hold up, I said I was going to talk about curiosity. You know, game devs get blamed for a lot of things, but it's rare to see a game dev actually making a specific consumer's life worse in a really measurable and obvious way. And Peter Molyneux, ever the trailblazer, pretty much did exactly that. Alongside the Goddess campaign, Molyneux launched a separate game on mobile devices called Curiosity: What's Inside the Cube? A question which has plagued philosophers for centuries. The idea was, you get one cube, single massive player base. Everybody chips away at it until somebody hits the center and gets a reward that was described as nothing less than life-changing, which then turned out to be a cut of the profits from Goddess and a place as God of Gods in the final game. Brian Henderson was that someone. One day he opened up Curiosity, tapped it, and it fell away to this video of Peter Molyneux congratulating him, and then inviting him to 22 Cans. He was told they would be in touch, and then nothing happened. This guy won this once-in-a-lifetime contest by piercing the Curiosity Cube, was promised a share of a blockbuster video game's profits, and a place in its lore forever, and got literally none of that. I don't mean, oh sorry Brian Henderson, we can't give that to you. I mean, they left him on fucking red. That's no good. How can that even have ever been a thing that happened?
You're right, John. It's wrong. It's one of those things where I thought someone else was handling it, and they hadn't.
Goddess, the game, was eating absolute fucking shit. Like piss poor critical reception. Rather than being anything close to the scope of Black and White 1 and 2, it was instead essentially a tablet god game where you manipulate really basic layers on a landscape and make your guys do a very limited range of actions. It doesn't feel like a world, it feels like a screensaver, and not a very good one either. These colors kind of suck. And so it kind of threw the entire internal operation at 22 Cans into just sheer chaos. And what that meant was they just straight up lacked the resources to do anything for Brian Henderson, despite having promised it to him. 22 Cans was soldiering on, but just enough to keep things going. They were already diverting resources to new projects because Goddess wasn't turning out. But the man's thoughts and feelings on it were kind of insulated from the general public. That is, until the interview. On February 13th, 2015, Rock Paper Shotgun contributor John Walker interviewed Peter Molyneux, and it's kind of an insane read.
It's terrible, it's wrong, it's bad of me, I shouldn't have. I should have checked on these things. But there's a million things to check on, John, and that one slipped through. I am a very flawed human being, as you are pointing out, and I totally accept that I'm a flawed human being.
Everyone's a flawed human being. That's not my point at all. In 2012...
Why would I have ignored him? I mean, why did I do that? It's just incompetence.
Okay. In Res...
I mean, I'm sure you're going to write Peter Molyneux's incompetent, and I am.
No, look, this is ridiculous. Everyone is a flawed human being. In Rezzed...
If you really want to get the truth, come down to the studio.
At Rezzed in 2012, you said that what's in the middle of the cube is so valuable, so life-changingly important, I don't want to waste the value of what's inside that cube. Could you have done more to waste it?
I wish I was smarter, and I wish everything that came out of my mouth came to pass. And there's no one in this industry, John, that hasn't been more committed and more passionate about the industry, and I hope you personally see that. Why don't you just come here for a couple of days? Do your job. Just see what goes on here.
Obviously, that's...
Because what you must realize is that doing a game in today's world and a game that's live is a nightmare. Let me just ask you one question. Do you think from the line of questioning you're giving me that this industry would be better without me?
I think the industry would be better without your lying a lot.
There are so many new technologies we're trying to implement. If all goes well, absolutely it should happen. I want it to happen. I think we need it to happen. With all the press that went on with Brian, why wouldn't we make that happen?
what I want to get out of this...
What you're almost going to get out of this is driving me out of the industry.
No, what I want...
And well done, John. Well done. And if that's what you want, you're going about it the completely right way.
If you were to be driven out of the industry, it would be a result of your own actions. I've done nothing but quote back things you've said and done.
I believe everything that I've said. If you think that I've got some sort of Machiavellian plan or trying to hide the truth from people, why would I do that? Why would I do that? I literally work 16 hours a day. I literally work 16 hours a day. I don't do that just to lie to people. I do it because I believe in what I'm doing. I'm still putting every ounce of my energy. I'm still not going to my son's play because I had to work on Goddess. I'm still getting shouted at by my wife because I'm not home. Do you know what time I got home last night? 2:30 in the morning. I'm someone. I'm defined by what I do in this industry, and I love it so much. And you know, it emotionally hurts me to have someone like yourself be so angry with me, and really all I want to do is make a great game. That's all I've ever wanted to do.
Do you think you can make a great game?
I think I could try.
And see, this entire thing is why I have such complicated feelings towards Peter Molyneux as a person. I mean, as a game dev, no, I would not buy a Peter Molyneux production anymore. I just wouldn't. But his whole deal isn't, in my opinion, that he's just a cynical game dev who goes out of its way to screw over his player base with false promises that he just knows he doesn't have to follow up on. I feel like he screws over his player bases for sure, but it's almost like he can't help himself. The Rock Paper Shotgun interview reads less like a charlatan getting exposed for who he is than an almost odd kind of harsh intervention.
What are you doing at the moment, John? You're trying to find any crack you can to actually destroy us. That's what this article is going to do, isn't it? Where's your big Watergate?
I don't think there is a Watergate. You've got this bizarre agenda for me that I don't have. If I have any agenda, if I have any goal to come out of this, it would be for you to commit to not continue this cycle of making promises that you can't keep.
Yeah, I'm totally committed. You are one of the people that will drive me out of any press interviews at all. You've got what you want, haven't you, John? You just don't want me around.
Listen, that is a ridiculous thing to say.
I haven't got a reputation in this industry anymore. There have been many times in my career where I said things I shouldn't have said about acorns and oak trees and dogs and God knows what else. But I promise you, John, I only said them because at the time I truly believed them. If I asked people to be interested in my newest game, Goddess...
I mean, Goddess is still in early access. It's been a decade.
If there's one reason for them to be interested...
Fable is just out of his hands. They're making fucking whatever, Fable Adventures, Fable Anniversary Edition. He's got nothing to do with that. And it's honestly...
is that I could not do anything that would not make my son proud.
It's a little sad. The tragedy of Peter Molyneux is that he wants to be who he pretends to be. He doesn't want to bullshit his audience. He leaves his audience endlessly frustrated and losing patience with him, but deeply embedded in that audience is himself. He's in there, also wishing that the things he said were true. The intuitive question is, okay, what's happened since this interview? It almost seems like he's just kind of faded into the ether, which might be for the best. Even if we can't have a Peter Molyneux redemption arc, at least he didn't become more of a charlatan. He's making a fucking NFT game now.